What's up, guys? Welcome to part 2 of Halo the Cold Protocol. Without further ado, let's just honestly just jump right back into this amazing story. So if you remember, we left off with Peter Bonifacio arresting Delgado, essentially saying, hey, like, you're probably the leak, even though we know Bonifacio is the leak. We also have it to where Velvadam, aka Velvadamy, aka the future arbiter, has been tasked to go to Charybdis 9 to attack the world. And where we left off with Keys is he did a quick mission on Charybdis 9 where the arbiter's headed to essentially prevent a weapon cells of Covenant technology that is being sold by the Covenant to insurrectionists, leading to the death of both his pilot, Jeffries, and the Oni Major Watanabe. So as the Midsummer's Night is preparing to leave the system to go after the Kestrel, a fleet of Covenant ships show up and begin to glass the planet of Charybdis 9. While this is happening, Velvadamy has been summoned to one of the ships where the Prophet of Regret is basically stationed. Remember, the Prophet of Regret is someone who likes to be out and about. He's rarely seen at High Charity. He's usually on ships with the Sangheili, exploring the universe, watching planets get glassed. So here he is once again doing that exact same thing that we've just known him to do in both Contact Harvest and Halo 2, of course. He summons Velvadamy because he has a special mission for him. He pulls out a plasma rifle and says, hey, this was found recently. Take a look at it. Thel's looking at it. He's like, okay, it's a standard plasma rifle. Until he sees something he's never seen before. There is a human number on it. And that's basically where the normal charge or capacity of the weapon would be for a normal Covenant technology. It's been modified to fit humans needs. And so with this, Arbiter drops it and goes, what is this blasphemy, this disgrace? And the Prophet of Regret goes, that's exactly what I said, and that's what you're gonna go figure out right now. He's like, we did track it to a system of 23 Libre, as the humans call it, and apparently we find out that the Arbiter recognizes the system name. He's been to Madrigal. He was there when it was attacked and glassed, so he knows where his mission is. So he prepares to leave, but before he does this, the Prophet of Regret pretty much looks at him and says, hey, you're gonna go with your ship, but I'm also sending another ship full of Kigyar and brutes with you, known as a Psalm Every Day. They're just going with you to help out. Now, this is still early on with the brutes, where the Sangheili are still the top dog, and they don't like the brutes, and brutes don't like the elites. Now, Thel is pretty much doesn't want this, but of course he's not going to argue with a hierarch. So he just says, your wish will be done, and he leaves. And as he leaves, Regret turns and starts watching the planet of Charybdis 9 get glassed, and we get a cool little internal dialogue of his perspective on everything that's been going on, specifically the events of Contact Harvest with Mendicant Bias, how they became the prophets, and this ginormous secret him and his fellow hierarchs are hiding. We then fast forward to when Thel and his command of elites, along with the other ship full of Kigar and brutes, arrive to 23 Libre, where they arrive exactly at Madrigal. They send down, sensory nodes and all this kind of stuff to scan the ship, or the planet, and find out there's nothing down there. The planet is still glassed and abandoned. So clearly, these weapons did not originate from here. Fortunately, while they're in the system, they do get a ping on their radar of something nearby. Something orbiting the gas giant of Hezoid. With that, Thel commands his units to start heading towards there. And as they arrive, they discover the rubble. But before anything could happen, they're fired upon. And not by the rubble, but by the Kigyar/brute ship. And so Thel's like, what the hell is happening? The brute chieftain known as Pelias, or Pelias, depending on how you want to pronounce it, shows up basically through a communication hologram in Thel's ship, and he all but says hey, thanks for helping us find the rubble. This is a great find, and it's going to definitely make the hierarchs happy. I'm going to GTFO and leave you here for, to die, so that way I can take credit and it looks good for the elites. And so He does send a boarding party after Thel's ship, after disabling it, but Thel's like, you know, they will not touch my ship. So he starts issuing commands to have certain areas of the ship, you know, blown up. And as these things are happening, he himself gets knocked by one of the explosions and hits his head on a bulkhead. This does prevent the Kigyars from getting aboard his ship, but it also knocks him out. We then switch back over to the Midsummer's Night, where Jacob, Keyes, and the rest of the team are following the Kestrel. They have been able to track it down and are now using their stealth capabilities to, you know, tail it. And as they tail it, they get to the rubble. Now, this is an amazing find because the UNSC did not know it existed. And so they're all really baffled and amazed by what has been created here, because it is pretty impressive. And, you know, everyone on the board is so starstruck by it that, you know, they don't even realize that the way that the rubble looks like it's orienting like some of its weaponry, it looks like they can tell exactly where the Midsummer's Night is, even though it's in stealth mode. Back with Thel, him and his bridge crew awaken within a prison cell. It seems that even though that they were to blow many of the ships, some of the Kigyar did get aboard and took him and his men hostage. Not hostage, but they took them prisoner, and they brought him to a piece of the rubble to be thrown into his cell. One of his bridge crew, known as Jorah Connery, basically tried to rush the Kigyar to prevent them from getting Thel, prevent them from doing anything, but was shot and injured and kind of like has a disabled leg. And so when they all awaken in this cell, Jorah pretty much looks to Thel and says, like, please, like, give me permission to die because I'm dishonored right now. And the only way I can reclaim my honor is through an honorable death. And so we find out that Jorah had broken off a piece of like a human bed that they are using inside of these cells, and is sharpened enough to be used as a weapon. And so, you know, Thel says like a Sangheili prayer or speech of sorts, and kills Jorah. And everyone in the room, it's hard to watch because on one end they're seeing a Sangheili being so weakened, which again is dishonorable, but they're also seeing someone close to them have to die. And like it's really hard, but at the same time, honor is important amongst the Sangheili. After this happens, the rest of his bridge crew that still have survived start telling Thel like what they've heard from the Kigyar in the room. That the Kigyar have been trading with the humans on the rubble, specifically a man by the name of Bonifacio. They also learned that the Kigyar hope to ransom these elites to be like back to their keep so that they can get a large sum of money and everyone wins. But what they don't realize is being ransomed it's dishonorable, and no elite is gonna pay a ransom for anyone. They're just gonna be like, kill them, bro. They've been dishonored. And so that's like when one of the Sangheili goes, this is how you know the Kigyar are stupid, because if they knew anything about us, they would know that this is pointless and they should just kill us. Thel, having this information and now this piece of a bed frame that he can use as a weapon, tells his elites like to wait and abide their time, because they're not done yet. They may be in a dishonorable moment, but they can reclaim it really easily. We then switch back to the holding cell that now Delgado's in a completely different part of the rubble. And he's being guarded by 5 men who, you know, they're sitting there with them telling, like, pretty much just telling Delgado, like, hey, whenever we get the word, it's game over. And so throughout time, Delgado's just sitting in this cell, but what they don't realize is he has a lockpick of sorts, like something that can help him get out. He doesn't use it right now because there's 5 guys guarding him. If he got out, he'd be easily like beaten up and thrown back in. So he waits and bides his time as well. And he does this at a perfect point where as he's sitting there, most of the men get up and leave. 4 of them leave, in fact, and leave 1 guy to guard Delgado. And the reason they do this is because they've been informed that the Kestrel has returned, which means they have another series of nav data, which kind of also means that Delgado's usefulness may be at an end. Aboard the Midsummer's Night, we have it to where as Keyes and the rest of the crew are still in awe over the rubble, they do start to notice that there's weapons being kind of reoriented and aimed right at them, even though they're in stealth. And Keyes kind of goes like, hey, like there's something going on down there. Zhang agrees with Keys and goes, all right, let's start to get out of, like, let's get further away and we'll monitor them from a distance to make sure our stealth equipment is working and just to keep us at a safe distance. But before that, Keys and the rest of the crew can start putting in those commands to get the ship away from the rubble, one of the officers on the bridge, a woman by the name of Badia Campbell, pulls a gun and starts shooting at Zhang and every other officer on the command bridge. Fortunate, or dumb enough to be honest, she didn't quick enough go for Keys, and so Keys is able to quickly apprehend her. And when he's holding her down, he's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And we kind of find out that she's on the inside. She is for the insurrectionists, and she's here to protect the rubble from the UNSC. And so as Key has her apprehended, she still has the gun. And so very struggled, but slowly, she aims the gun at herself and shoots herself. And so then with this, Keys is like, what the hell do we do now? And Zhang, who's injured but alive, still tells Keys, like, get us the hell out of here. But before that can happen, the fusion cores within the ship start detonating. That's when we find out that Badia had set charges on the ship's fusing cells. That, you know, like these things that give power to the ship. And so all they have left are the propulsion systems. Keys would like to use the propulsion systems to get closer to the rubble so that way they're a harder target. It's very unlikely that the rubble will start firing on a ship that's too close to, you know, pieces of the rubble that could risk killing people on the rubble. But Zhang disagrees. He doesn't trust anyone right now on his ship, so he's telling Keys, get us as far away from the rubble as possible. And Keys, being a good soldier who follows orders, starts to get the ship away from the rubble. As this is all happening, Zhang gets up and says, like, he's going somewhere. So he's, you know, hobbling along, practically dying, and suddenly a nuke gets deployed. And there's a brief weird like moment where they're all kind of like, did Zhang just deploy, like, did he just send a nuke out? But then you hear Zhang pop up on the intercom saying, like, this is Commander Zhang of the UNSC Midsummer's Night. I have just sent our nuke out elsewhere, like, to be just used on nothing. I'm doing this to show you that my crew means no harm to you. You know, don't kill us, don't attack us, like, just don't let my crew die. You know, we're not here as a hostile, you know, unit. We're just here for ... And then with that, you know, someone calls medical attention for Zhang, and Keys, being like the next in command, makes his way there, and Zhang's pretty much like dying, and he tells him, like, protect my crew. And with that, Zhang doesn't really die. He kind of goes into like an unconscious state, and that's when, you know, they get boarded by the rubble and everyone's taken prisoner. In the Sanghili jail cell, there's a lot of people. I just realized there's a lot of people being imprisoned right now. The elites are waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And this comes when that nuke that was sent off by the Midsummer's Night, it detonated. Now remember, a lot of times when nukes go off, they have an EMP effect. So when it went off and the radiation came through the certain bay that like fell and his elites are waiting in, the room loses power. And this little grunt who was talking mad shit a minute ago, you know, who's guarding the elites, starts floating around because, you know, the room loses gravity. And with that, Thel's able to get close, pull him in, kill him with the bed frame, unlock the gates. And this is like just where one of the coolest bars comes out from the elites, saying, like, you should always know to never take us prisoner, always kill us. And I'm like, okay, relax. All right, bars, chill. Scratch that. I want to say exactly what he says, so I pulled it up. But Veer, one of the other elites with Thel, says, this is why you don't capture Sanghili. You execute them. And I was like, why are we throwing so many Sanghili bars right now? Like, relax. But with that, they are able to charge down this corridor towards an airlock that is being guarded by some jackals. They dispatch the jackals very easily. And then they board the ship that these jackals were guarding, like, the airlock to. and get aboard the ship and kill all the Jackal commanders aboard, leaving just a bunch of grunts who are running the ship. They can't kill these grunts because they do need a relatively large crew. So lucky enough, they're elites, and they're looking at all these little Ungoi going, you're going to listen to us, and you're going to follow our orders. And they're all like, okay, relax, I got you. We then switch over to Grey Team, who has, pretty much watched the Midsummer's Night get boarded, send off its nukes to just be, wasted and destroyed. And so Jai, obviously, he wants to go help the UNSC, but it's, everyone in the ship is saying that's like suicide, because even though they are Spartans, they would be facing the entire rebel trying to get to them. Juliana says that she can protect the crew of the Midsummer's Night, but for right now, they need to go save Delgado, because he's more likely to die right now than the crew is. Jai is then also informed by Mike that, like, hey, the UNSC weren't just here for anything. Like, the Kestrel has returned, and everyone pretty much just knows what the Kestrel is and how important it is. So Jai goes, all right, here's the mission parameters. We destroy the Kestrel, then we get Delgado, then we save the crew of the UNSC. With Vel, when he's on the ship, I know we're jumping around a lot. This is just unfortunately how the book is. But when Vel is on this ship that him and his elites have taken command of, there is a Grunt deacon. Remember, deacons are kind of like priests almost in a way. They're like the highest rank a Grunt can obtain. This deacon's name is Pipit. Pipit? Anyways, they're approaching a planet known as Metaset. And we kind of learn that, like, from this Grunt, this deacon, from Pipit, that on this planet is paradise and freedom. And Thel's like, what are you talking about? And he pretty much says that, like, in the Covenant, grunts are only used for one thing, and that is for cannon fodder, for war, for death. But this jackal known as Reth is promising Ungoi to come to this planet of Metaset and start a life there. No breeding regulations, unlimited food nipple. The planet's atmosphere is methane, so they don't have to wear the uncomfortable like face mask. It's basically just a paradise. It's basically Valhalla for Ungoi, and that's why it's paradise. And so Thel, utilizing his his brain power, he realizes, like, anyone who can get Ungoi to come to a planet and just start reproducing willy-nilly is essentially creating an army. So Thel orders his team to go to this planet. And as they land on the planet, two of his Sankili, him and another Sankili known as Sal go in camo and make their way to like a makeshift like fortress that they expect to find Reth in. They are actually fortunate to get in there because it's the only area on the entire planet that has, normal oxygen that everyone else but the Ungoi breathe. This also means that many of the Ungoi cannot get in because not many of them on this planet have breathers. They all pretty much are just breathing the air naturally. That means that Reth, for the most part, besides maybe a few Kigyar and Ungoi who do have face masks, he's practically exposed. And when you have Sanghili zealots that can go camo coming after you, they were very easily able to get him, and they apprehend him. But of course, this doesn't go off without a complete hitch. Sneaking in was easy. Apprehending him was easy. Getting off is the hard part, because now you have a Grunt squawking and being loud. And so Thel pretty much orders their ship to come pick them up, and they have to hold off until it gets there. While this is happening, Reth is yelling at them to let him go, because they're making a huge mistake. He's here on the orders of a hierarch. And this confuses both Thel and Sal, because they're here on the orders of a hierarch. And so they kind of turn to Reth and go, what do you mean you're here on the orders of a hierarch? You're clearly doing black market deals, betraying the Covenant. And Reth goes, no, I'm literally here because I was ordered by a hierarch. And they're like, which hierarch then? And Reth says, truth. Both sides are equally confused what's going on, because, the elites say that they're here on the orders of regret, Reth orders of truth. But before they can really get down to the nitty-gritty of it, another elite by the name of Czar brings the ship in and extracts them off the planet. Back with Keyes and the crew, they are taken to the Asuncion habitat. I'll put the name right here. And it's here where the entire crew is brought before like the rebel command. Not really the Security Council, but like these officers who are here basically saying like, hey, on the rebel, we don't see factions. We don't see UNSC. We don't see insurrectionists. We just see refugees and people. You have two choices. Choice number one, you forsake the UNSC, you abandon your oath, and you become citizens of the rebel. Or you maintain your oath, you maintain your loyalty to the UNSC, and you go to prison. And like, there's a lot of people who are kind of like even in the UNSC, they're like, that's kind of a good deal. Like, I'd rather, be free than in prison. But then Keyes gets up and pretty much gives a speech saying like, I understand that like right now is kind of a terrible moment, but we made an oath to protect Earth and all her colonies. So I'm asking you to stay loyal to the UNSC so that way we can continue to serve and protect the galaxy from the Covenant. It's an effective speech and a lot of people still stay with him, but then a lot of people also do go over to the rebel. And this is even where like Keyes points out to Faison, like, some of your Marines I see are getting in line to become citizens. And Faison's like, yeah, you know how ODSTs are. Feet first into hell. And it's kind of like basically saying like, yeah, they're not really going to be joining. And I'm like, can't wait to see how that works out later. I think the funniest part from this chapter, though, is after Keyes gives his speech, a woman by the name of Maria Esquivel comes up. She's from the rebel. She's the one telling them like, hey, these are your choices. She looks at Keyes and goes, hey, no more speeches. Your ass is going to prison. And then she starts talking about how the UNSC was probably the one that started the war with the Covenant and how the rebel is looking to join the Covenant as a junior race, which is ridiculous because everyone should know at this point, like, the Covenant does not care about humanity. And we know as readers from Contact Harvest, the humans will never be allowed to join because they are the inheritors. They are the reclaimers. We do not want them. We don't want the secret to be released. Before we see what happens to Keyes and the rest of the crew, we do get a very quick chapter. Jai and Andriana get very close to the Kestrel and plant an EMP on it. The EMP pretty much will just wipe the entire ship of everything. All the computers, systems, everything will be wiped, thereby deleting any nav data on the ship. And so Mike warns them to get super far away from the ship because once he detonates the EMP, their armor is going to be relatively affected. And they're successful. Jai and Andriana get off the ship and fly back to their ship with Mike, and they detonate it, and the Kestrel is now a chess piece off the board. Learning that the Kestrel has become useless, Delgado has suddenly become famous again from Bonifacio. So he orders that lone guard that was guarding Delgado to bring him to him. He's actually, ironically enough, brought to the council, the entire security council for the rebel, where Diego and Bonifacio and other people are there, basically saying like, hey, actually though, we need you to hand over the nav data. Like, it's actually important now. Like, no more games. Delgado pretty much submits because this is now no longer just Bonifacio. This is the entire security council, the people who charged him with hiding it in the first place. And he tells them that it's hidden on his ship, the Distancia. And Bonifacio says, okay, I'll go get it. And Diego and Delgado still don't really trust Bonifacio. So like, okay, but we're going with you. And Bonifacio goes, yeah, that's fine. Like, let's talk on our way there. We learn from Bonifacio on their way to the Distancia that when the Covenant Glass Magical and the Rebel was formed, Kigyar ships had found the Rebel early on, and everyone panicked thinking they were going to be attacked again. But Bonifacio understood the Kigyar race. He understood that they were traders, they were pirates, they were merchants. They just want to trade and sell. And so it was Bonifacio's idea to start trading with them. Now, what exactly did the Kigyar want to trade in? They wanted slipspace drives. And these Kigyar were led by Reth, the resident Kigyar that Fel and his elites have just apprehended. And in return, the people on the rubble got Covenant weapons and clothes and technology and other stuff that they can utilize to build the rubble up. We also learned that like throughout all this, the humans have obtained the slip space drives that they're supposed to give to the Kig-Yar, but they haven't handed them over yet. And the reason why is because of something known as Project Exodus, which is essentially a super top secret project of placing all these slip space drives on one massive asteroid in the rubble that will be used kind of as an escape plan. It can house over 1 million citizens on it, and then all the slip space drives will work together and basically push this entire asteroid into slip space, escaping the rubble in the event that the Kig-Yar betray them or the Covenant return. It's a really clever plan that no one knew. Even Delgado was like amazed by it, because everything on the rubble is like very democratic. Like everything is voted on, everything is shared, but not this. As they make their way to the Distancia, Delgado or Bonifacio convinces everyone that he has the rubble's best interests at heart. He says, I know that you don't trust me. I know I've seemed shady, but just know everything I've done has been for the, best interests of the rubble. And both Delgado and Diego like kind of believe him. That is until they get aboard the ship. Delgado takes them to the location of the nav data, pulls it out. Diego says, hand it to me, and together we'll take it to the Security Council. And Bonifacio goes, or pulls a gun on Diego and says, hand it to me or Diego gets shot. And Delgado was being stoic. He says, I'm not handing this over to you. And Bonifacio shoots Diego, causing Delgado to hand over the nav data. And Bonifacio says, thanks. Reth's going to be so happy with this information. We then switch back to Fel and his elites. His main elite, Sal, has been interrogating Reth. But it got to a point where the interrogation kept going and going and going, to the point that like Fel told Sal, like, if you're not getting anything out of him, quit interrogating him, because it's pointless, it's wasteless, it's a waste of blood. But Sal was annoyed. He was mad with everything going on because he kept hearing Reth say the same thing about, the prophets. There clearly something going on. The prophets have either put these two groups up to something, caused them to conflict. There's something going on, and it's angered Sal to the point where he just keeps interrogating it. And this leads Fel to charge Sal to basically like brand his own wrists with cuts, to basically show that he's been dishonored by Fel because he decided to disobey an officer. It's like the greatest punishment you could receive, because it's visible. Everyone will see it. We then have it to where Reth pretty much confesses to Fel. I don't really know why, but he tells Fel everything. He says, well, not really confesses. He's been telling the truth, but Sal doesn't want to believe it. But he tells Fel that like the Prophet of Truth doesn't think the Prophet of Regret is anywhere near getting close to finding the human world. That's pretty much what Regret's doing. He's been trying to find Earth, but he doesn't think he's close at all. And so when Reth discovered the rubble and figured that the humans would trade with him, Reth brought this proposal of trading with the humans, getting the nav data from the humans, raising an army of grunts on Metaset, and then when they got the nav data, attack the rubble, betrayed the rubble, and thereby they would have the coordinates to Earth and the rubble would be destroyed by the Covenant. Truth signed off on it, but Truth kept it quiet to himself. He didn't tell any of the other prophets, which is why when Regret discovers the modified human weapons, he was confused what was going on and thought there was heresy afoot and that the Kig-Yar had betrayed them and sent Fel. So it's just an unfortunate of prophets not talking to each other, prophets doubting each other, that's led to this conflict between these two groups. So with this said, Fel has come to the conclusion that the best way forward, because in a way he's kind of crossed a prophet, and not just any prophet, he's crossed the Prophet of Truth. So he thinks the best way for him to go forward is to destroy the rubble, because at the very least the heresy of modified weapons would stop and the humans of the rubble will be killed, which is kind of like always the end goal for the Covenant, kill humanity. And so that becomes his new mission. Back on the Distancia, Delgado pulls a weapon from one of Bonifacio's guards and aims it at Bonifacio. When a quick little firefight happens, a window is shot and cracked open. And this starts to leave, obviously, oxygen starting to spill out of the ship. This allows Bonifacio the time he needs to escape from the ship and get off and leave Diego and Delgado for dead. Because remember, Diego's been shot, and now Delgado's on a ship that's going to slowly but surely lose air and oxygen and is not able to, disembark. So I explained this in a video, and sorry for the low quality on this recording. This is editing James here, so I found something I messed up and I don't have my equipment to fix at the current moment. Bonifacio, when shooting with Delgado, they were inside of the airlock attached to the Distancia, and that is what starts leaking air, while Bonifacio himself escapes onto the Distancia, taking the ship. The leak air causes this airlock that's attached to both the Distancia and a habitat of the rubble to basically go on lockdown to prevent air loss from either the ship or the habitat. And that is where Delgado and Diego are currently trapped. I explained this a little bit more in the actual video, but I wanted to put something right here just so that way when you're watching this and I explain way later, you're not as confused. But again, sorry for the little hiccup, misread the part, but yeah. In this moment, Delgado uses the beacon that he was given to by Adriana early on so that way they can come pick them up and save them. Back aboard Thel's ship though, Reth has convinced a few grunts to help him get off the ship. And he does this by saying, like, even though they are afraid of elite retaliation, they should be more concerned with, forsaking the great journey and abandoning their nipple brothers. Pause. When he is finally released from his shackles, he disables parts of the ship and then escapes to an escape pod back to the planet of Mediset, angering Thel, but Thel tells himself that Reth isn't the objective, the rubble is. All right, I do have a correction because I did mess up. I didn't want to re-edit the whole video, so here it is. When Bonifacio shot the window, he didn't shoot the window aboard the Distancia. He shot the window within the airlock, this little bay that connects one of the pieces of the rubble, or the habitat of the rubble, and the Distancia. He shot a window in this little airlock. Bonifacio then escapes onto the Distancia and then unlatches from the airlock, and he locks down the entire airlock to prevent Diego and Delgado from escaping. So they're basically attached to a habitat of the rubble. They just can't get out. And that's when, in this part, Grey Team comes aboard, is able to get in connection with the airlock, open it up, and get Diego and Delgado out of the airlock. So then it's here that, we find out Diego died. The time that it took for Grey Team to get there and save them both was too long, and he, similar to Malco from the beginning, bled out and died. Delgado then says they need to go after Bonifacio, but at the same time they need to figure out what the Jackal/Khagar plans are. So they come to this conclusion. They are able to track the Distancia and see that it's heading towards a Jackal ship. So the plan becomes this. Mike and Adriana will go after the Distancia and Bonifacio, while Jai and Delgado will go after the UNSC crew to get them saved and to start building their own coalition of an army because they realize something big is about to happen. Back on Mediset though, we get a quick chapter about how Reth is starting to prepare his army to basically attack and invade the rubble. All right, so this is gonna be very weird because this is where a lot of these chapters start becoming very quick. This happens, new chapter. This happens, new chapter. So I'm going to try and explain it as clearly as possible without being as confusing as possible. Jai and Delgado are able to break into the prison that the crew of the Midsummer's Night is aboard, and they are able to free them and get pretty much everyone out of there. While that is happening, Delgado was able to find another ship known as the Mighty Sparrow. Utilizing Juliana, they are able to commandeer it and then go pick up the crew of the Midsummer's Night, because again, they don't have the ability to get to that ship right now, but they can use the Mighty Sparrow as kind of their flagship until they can get back to their own frigate. The plan here is now to get Juliana aboard a Covenant Kig-Yar ship known as the Infinite Spoils, so that way she can be uploaded onto the ship, figure out what the Kig-Yar plan is, and then get off and get back to the rubble. All while this is happening, Vel knows that they also need to get the Infinite Spoils. It would be a great ship to basically take control of and utilize against the rubble. Meanwhile, Mike and Adriana get very close to the Distancia. And we kind of learn a little bit more about Adriana. As she's getting prepared to board the ship, take out Bonifacio and his guards, she starts talking about the thrill and the love of the adrenaline she gets for a mission. And this is where we find out Adriana never escaped Reach multiple times, or at least the boot camp base, because she wanted off. She did it because she loved the adrenaline of being chased, of being able to escape and everything that entailed with it. She never really had any aim to leave or get off. That's why she stopped escaping, because she didn't want them to take all this adrenaline away from her. She stayed as a Spartan so she could continue to be a Spartan and continue to receive that that adrenaline rush she gets from being a Spartan. So as she gets on the ship, there's one guard that's like shooting at her, and again, she's in full Mjolnir armor, and so eventually the dude goes, you know what, never mind, this isn't even worth it, I hate that dude. And we find out that just as Adriana had got onto the ship, Bonifacio got aboard an escape pod and shot off. He then radios Adriana and says like, hey, if you let my escape pod escape, I will tell you where the nav data is. I left it on the Distancia. And so before she agrees to this, she looks to his guard and says, did he make a copy? And the guard goes, I swear on my life, he did not have time. He did not make a copy. There's only the original. It's here on the ship. So Adriana, giving this man the benefit of the doubt, agrees to Bonifacio's terms. The moment he gets out of weapons range for their ship, he tells her it's in this specific location. She goes and check. Sure enough, it's there. She has it scanned by Mike and everything. He confirms it's the original and it doesn't seem to have been tampered or copied. Bonifacio then escapes and is all, yay! And Adriana and Mike kind of determine, do they go after Bonifacio or do they go back and help Jai? Adriana says Bonifacio's dead anyways, like he doesn't have what he promised the Kig-Yar. They'll kill him. Let's go help Jai. Fortunately, while this is happening, the Lucky Sparrow, is able to get aboard or latch on to the Infinite Spoils. This Kig-Yar ship that, Fel's heading towards because he wants it to destroy the rebel, but Juliana needs to get aboard so that way she can upload and figure out what is happening, or like what is the plan for the Kig-Yar. As they latch on, all the Spartans and ODSTs break inside, start shooting up the place, and they escort Lieutenant Keys to the command bridge so that way he can plug in Juliana. When he gets her in there, she's able to upload, figure out what's going on, and she informs them like, we need to get back to the rebel and we gotta start preparing because an invasion is coming, and we need to get Keys and his crew to the Midsummer's Night so that way they can have like their best gun and attack this invading force. All while this is happening, they are all alerted that another Covenant vessel is coming. We then switch perspectives over to Vel, where him and his elites are watching as the human ship made contact with the Infinite Spoils, and they can hear like the chatter of conflict going on aboard. One thing I didn't probably mention is that the Infinite Spoils has been attached to one of the habitats airlocks on the Rebel. And so when Thel and his people are coming towards the Infinite Spoils, they shoot at the Sparrow, the ship that Delgado has commandeered. And pretty much everyone says, like, we got to get off this ship and get to the airlock so we can get basically clear of these two ships and prevent the Covenant from killing us. So when Delgado's waiting for pretty much every other Marine and ODST to get off the ship, he is then pretty much almost a lone survivor. And that's when Faison, our favorite ODST, comes in and says, like, all right, you're the last one. We got to get out of here. Let's go. So they exit the Sparrow. They get aboard the Infinite Spoils, and as they're like weaving through corridors that should have been cleared, they are fired upon. It seems a jackal might have been hiding around the corner and shot at Faison, and it's enough for him to become like unable to pretty much walk. And so he's like laying on the ground and he's telling Delgado like, hey, you need to get off board. Like, you need to get out of here. Abandon me. Give me your gun because I'm going to need it. And just get off the ship. And so Delgado's like, I'm not leaving you. And Faison's like, get out of here. And so then Delgado agrees, runs and leaves, and then he radios everyone else saying like, Faison's down, he needs help, we got to get after him. And that's when Jai says, all right, I'm going in to save him. As this is happening, Thel and Zar destroy the Sparrow, and they latch themselves onto the infinite spoils. They then make their way on a board, and as they're looking around, they are fired upon by Phazon. And Phazon only has a pistol, and he's shooting at elites. And very quickly and very easily, Zar shoots back and kills him. And so as they go over to like investigate and look at this, they kind of start talking about like whether humans are noble or not. And while this is happening, Jai comes out of nowhere and starts fighting the two. And Jai starts trading blows with Thel. And we can actually see this from one of the Halo 2 terminals, which I'll have up here as a video. And as they're fighting, like both are putting up a good fight. And it's the first time Thel has ran into a Spartan. And so he's a little taken aback by how strong this human is. But when Jai realizes that Phazon's dead, he recognizes that like this is a futile fight. He needs to get out of here and ends up basically just abandoning the fight altogether. And again, this kind of leaves Thel a little struck, not knowing how to react to being attacked that easily and that much of a fight from just a single human being. So now with the infinite spoils being under the command of Thel and Zar, they start poring over all the records aboard this Kigyar ship and come to find out that Reth was telling the truth. The prophet of truth sent them here to do this all. Like this has all been ordered by truth. And now Zar is worried that they've crossed a hierarch, but at the same time, he is also like, what is going on? Why do I feel like that? Like we don't know anything. And Thel kind of reminds him that they're under the orders of a hierarch as well, and that they need to continue their mission until either hierarch shows up and orders them otherwise. We then get a brief chapter where Bonifacio is aboard his little escape pod, and as he's getting closer to Mediset, he hails Reth, and Reth's like, cool, hey, good to hear from you. Do you have my nav data? And Bonifacio's like, no, but hey, I can figure out how to get it back for you. And Reth goes, oh, yikes. Yeah, you're kind of useless to me. And Bonifacio's like, wait, hear me out. I can tell you where the data is. Bonifacio's like, all right, and Reth's like, okay, cool. I'll hear you out. Tell me where it's at. He's like, you'll let me live? And Reth goes, yeah, I'll let you live. And so Bonifacio's like, okay, cool. It's with these people. And Reth goes, fantastic. Have fun in there. And Bonifacio's like, but you said you let me live. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to come kill you, but that doesn't mean I have to come save you either. And with that, Reth closed off communications. And Bonifacio's just left to wait to either die from being frozen to death or losing oxygen in this little escape pod. We then make a quick cut over to Charybdis 9, where Regret is still aboard his ship watching the glassing of this planet, but surprise to no one, Truth has shown up. And they start yapping about what's been going on, and Truth pretty much says that Regret was too hasty ordering Thel and the rest of the elites and jackals and brutes to go handle this issue over on the rubble. Now both realize that right now, the human world location is not revealed, and a lot of political backdoor stuff has been going on for this type of stuff to happen. This pretty much means that these two prophets have to destroy all evidence of these missions, meaning everyone involved, from the brute Pallius till Vel Vadimi, need to die so they can keep it a secret. Back aboard the Spartan ship known as Petya. I don't know why I didn't say the name of their little freighter ship until now, but aboard this, Juliana is both debriefing the Spartans within their own ship while also debriefing the Security Council through another, clone copy of her. They're basically telling both sides what's happening. The Kigyar have been lying to us this whole time. They're setting up a plan to invade us here soon. We need to do something about this. At first, the The crew or the Security Council doesn't believe it, and they would rather try and negotiate with Reth than go into battle or do any sort of invasions. While this is happening, Juliana pretty much wants to get keys to the Midsummer's Night because she knows they're going to need it. And so while she's also yapping with the Security Council, they're all kind of no longer trusting her because they determine she's been working with the UNSC. They know she's getting close to rampancy, so they kind of cut her out from the conversation. That's when Juliana tells Delgado, like, you need to get to the Security Council because right now Diego's sister, Maria, is his stand-in, and I need eyes and ears. And that's when Diego gets there, finds out that they want to negotiate, and Delgado's like, what do you mean? Like, that is ridiculous. We're all gonna die. We need to get out of here, or at least fight back. And so for a brief moment, Keyes and Jai are talking about like what the UNSC should do. On one end, Keyes thinking like, this isn't the Spartans fight. They're clearly on a completely different mission than them. With the nav data now recovered, technically if the UNSC wanted to, they could leave. And Jai says the same thing to Keyes. Like, he's like, I'm not leaving until we get your crew back to the Midsummer's Night so you can leave the system. So there's kind of this conversation going on about abandoning the rebel and just leaving because there's no possibility of the nav data now being leaked. Like, they could leave and everyone here will die and no one will be able to say anything. But Keyes is like, no. After leaving Charybdis 9, it left an impact on him. He's not sacrificing his humanity for this war. And so he says he's going to stay and help the rebel. And with that, Jai's like, then you got my gun, sir. And while they're having this conversation, they get like kind of an alert of an incoming like Covenant ships kind of getting prepared to like back out, meaning something big's about to happen. And that actually kind of sways the Security Council's decision to start like attacking Reth first and figuring out how to get everyone off utilizing Project Exodus. So the plan then becomes, we need to hit Metaset before they can get prepared and send ships at us. We do have the problem of the single ship Infinite Spoils by Thelvadami currently attacking the Rebel. So here's kind of like the plan that they come up with. They're going to send the Spartans down to Metaset to take out 2 defense units, or 2 sentry units and 2 defense guns. This will prevent them from being able to shoot any sort of whatever's being like thrown at them. And what I mean by being thrown at them is Juliana has an idea of, while they begin to evacuate everyone off the rubble and into this single asteroid, aka Project Exodus, she will then detach and launch those pieces of the rubble at Metaset, at Covenant ships, basically just taking these pieces and just launching them. But they first need to get to this planet, take out these defense weapons, and that will allow them to just start throwing buildings at them. This is actually a really unique part because as everyone's getting their missions, Keyes turns to Mike and says, hey, if this mission's a success and we get everyone aboard Project Exodus, they're gonna need nav data to get out of here. So he orders Mike to hand over the nav data to the people of the rubble so that way they can escape. He knows very clearly he is disobeying the Cole Protocol, and this could lead to him being imprisoned and maybe even like killed for being a traitor. But he's gonna do it. This is the right thing to do. So the way they're gonna get everyone, the Spartans and the ODSTs, down to the planet is actually kind of cool. They're gonna go straight at Metaset and they're gonna hit the orbit fast and hard, and then they're gonna slow down just for a brief moment, getting as close to like their location as possible. Basically do like a stick drift type thing, drop the ODST Spartans onto the planet and then shoot back up into the atmosphere, getting out of orbit from the planet. This goes off without a hitch. The way that they're going to get re-picked up is they're going to then deploy Pelicans to come down, pick up the crew or all the Spartans and ODSTs that survive, and take them back over to the Midsummer's Night. And the mission actually goes off without pretty much any problem. It's a rough landing, and a lot of the Spartans and ODSTs aren't fully together when it happens, but many of them get down to these buildings, the sensory building and then the 2 AA guns. They plant their nukes, it's pretty much their nukes and their charges, and detonate them. And this starts allowing Juliana to start launching these pieces of the rubble at Metaset, at where Reth is. And so as all of the Spartans and ODSTs have planted their nukes, get extracted, and fly off the planet, the nukes go off. And fortunately enough, Reth wasn't really within where his little like makeshift base is. It's not near any of these, at least in the terms of a nuke. It's enough that it damages some things and causes radiation poisoning, but Reth survives. And he's able to escape this makeshift building and get onto a ship to get off the planet. But as he's getting on this ship, he looks up in the sky and sees a literal habitat from the rubble coming down on him, and it just crushes and kills him. When Thel witnesses this happening, he's kind of like, all right, my new mission now is to, take the Exodus, stop the humans, and get the location to the human homeworld. Because now he's realizing that, like, with Reth gone, this massive invasion is pretty much done. All of these grunts just got nuked. And now it's just his ship that can stop the rubble. But if they get on Exodus and escape, they lose the Exodus, all the people, aka the rubble, and they lose the nav data to Earth. So Thel's kind of like now chasing them, and he is doing everything in his power to stop them. And so as everyone's getting back to Midsummer's Night and Project Exodus, Jai gets aboard the Exodus, hands the nav data over to them. And so the Midsummer's Night will be utilized as kind of like a cover ship to allow the Exodus to get out of the asteroid belt so it can have a clear shot into slip space. And so they're basically pretty much just shooting at the Infinite Spoils, aka Thel's ship, preventing them from getting to the Exodus. And while this is happening, Zar, one of Thel's elites, is kind of grumbling to himself. Like, he's pissed with everything going on with the prophets, their machinations, these backroom political deals that are causing him and his people to get killed for pretty much their own, like, ignorance. And Thel's looking at Zar like, you're getting very close to talking about, like, heresy. Like, I need you to chill. Fortunately enough, the Exodus and the Midsummer's Night get clear of the asteroid field. And it's kind of determined here that the Exodus is actually going to have to go to an inner colony planet. Originally, they were just going to use a random coordinate to be free of the UNSC and the Covenant. But then they realized that Exodus wasn't as stable and ready as they thought. And that, like, if they try and use multiple jumps like they originally planned, they may run out of fuel before they could do anything, or the entire asteroid might crumble. So then Key says, go to this inner colony planet. That way we can get you and all your people off that ship as quickly as possible. Again, completely violating the Cole Protocol, not just with the Covenant being right there, but also with the fact that they're bringing a bunch of insurrectionists to the planet. And the rubble isn't just all insurrectionists. There are just refugees, but more than likely these are people who do not like the UNSC. With them going through slip space, Thel and all of them pretty much realize that, like, they have failed. Ref's mission failed, the humans got away, the nav data got away, like, everything was kind of a blunder. We also get to see Bonifacio's barely alive in his little escape pod, realizing, like, he was wrong about Reth. Like, Reth was going to destroy the rubble. That was the grand plan this whole time. It was never about just getting ready to attack Earth. It was to just betray him. But then he sees more Covenant ships coming out of slip space, and he goes, I can still be of use, meaning he can still betray humanity. And that's when he tries to hail this Covenant fleet, thinking he's saved, until they just shoot him with a plasma torpedo and he's officially dead, thank God. And so back aboard the Infinite Spoils, Thale is now talking to both both prophets, Truth and Regret, and debriefing them on everything that's happened. And the prophets ultimately decide that, like, this whole situation has been a mess, and it's filled with traitors that will have to be killed. And Thel believes that he is somehow part of this. Even though he was following orders, he knows he has failed his mission. And just, again, it's all politics for these two prophets. And so they do pretty much have a plan to kill everyone here. That is until Zar, again, one of Thel's elites, walks in, threatening to kill the prophets because he's holding an energy sword. It's not activated, but pretty much just having any sort of unholstered weapon around the prophets is in its own dishonorable, and like you could pretty much be executed. And that's when Thel stops and beheads Zar. And with this, Truth sees in Thel someone who can be utilized, someone who has enough honor and loyalty to the covenant that he would behead his own people to protect the prophets. And so they let Thel survive. And after that, Thel comes to the conclusion that as much as he loves being, or as much as he's fighting to become a full-on fleet master, he's more of just a ship master right now, but to become a full-on fleet master, he doesn't ever want to be in the crosshairs of the prophets again. He never wants to be around them because of just everything that's happened here today. He'd rather just become a fleet master and do his own thing as a Sangheili warrior rather than a pawn of the prophets. Little does he know he's in for quite a big ride 17 years from now. In the final few chapters of this book, the Midsummer's Night and Project Exodus exit subspace in the Scorpi system, or Scorpi system. And the UNSC is prepared to fire on the Exodus until Keyes hails them, tells them what's going on. And the UNSC stands down and says, okay, we'll get everyone off the ship as soon as possible. And it turns out the asteroid is crumbling and falling apart. And that like they were fortunately able to get everyone off of it before it pretty much just, crumbled. Back on Sangheili, Thel is speaking with his elder Lak Vadam, and he's talking about being conflicted. Like he's happy because he's been promoted, but at the same time, like he's been promoted to a ship within the fleet of particular justice, which becomes very important down the road. But now Thel like states he's worried about what he's seen from the prophets. He's worried a bit about what does this mean for his people when just one or two of the prophets could have such an inability to communicate that it leads to the death of many Sangheili and much of the covenant. And then he turns to his own elder and says, like, is this heresy? And his elder's like, could be, it might not be. I think these are important questions really to ask yourself. And Thel kind of sticks himself and says, like, I can't be thinking of this. I can't be a heretical person. But he decides that life must go on, and therefore he will continue with his goals and his mission. In the end, Keyes is back aboard Admiral Cole's ship and talking with him and an Oni agent, and he debriefs him on everything. And he's fully expected to get in trouble, to get court-martialed, or maybe even prison. But then he's told, like, you did what you could do with the means you had. You made the best decisions possible. You're being promoted to commander. You're back in the game, Keyes. And they also say like the Midnight Summers will be refitted soon, and until then, Keyes is free to go home and spend some R&R time with his family, aka Miranda. And then when Keyes leaves, he walks out and sees Grey Team, and they're like, hey, we're gonna ask for a prowler and go right back undercover and doing what we're good at. And with that, Keyes shakes their hands and departs. And it's funny because soon after that, the Grey Team walks right into the room, and Commander Halley, the other Oni agent that they didn't reveal the name until after Keyes' chapter, I don't know why, he told Cole like seconds before Grey Team walked in that Grey Team was going to ask for another prowler. And the moment Grey Team walks in, they're just immediately, you're approved for your prowler. And Grey Team's like, sick. And Cole's like, you guys are going deeper than you've ever been before, so like be prepared. And Grey Team's like, it's what we live for, sir. In the end, Delgado himself has decided that he is going to fight for the UNSC. He's going to put his pilot skills to better use and become a UNSC pilot. And at first, he's kind of almost rejected by this Navy recruiting officer because of his ties to Madrigal and the insurrectionists. That is until Commander Hadley, that Oni agent, comes in, says, is this Delgado? And Delgado's like, yep, that's me. He goes, cool. You're accepted. And once you've complete boot camp, there will be a UNSC prowler with your name on it. And the recruiting officer is like, but sir, he's an insurrectionist. And he's like, I don't care. We need this guy. And Delgado goes, nothing's official till I sign, right? And Hadley's like, yeah, that's correct. And then Delgado flips off the Oni officer and then signs his papers. It's so good. And then the book ends with Keyes back on Earth, and he's with Miranda Keyes, and they go off and get ice cream together, and he just thinks about what's next. So like I said, even part 2 was a long video. This was a big book. I mean, in itself, it's not that big, but the details are dense. Realistically, this book was perfect. From beginning to end, I was hooked. The story, phenomenal. Fel Vadimi, I love anything with the Arbiter, but his character development is so intriguing, especially given what we know about his future, who he becomes, how he does become the major point within the Prophet's crosshairs later down the road. And Keyes' own like moral obligations and his own thoughts on everything switching up from, you know, I have to just ignore what's going on to I'm not sacrificing my humanity for dumb orders. I'm protecting people. I think just overall, these two characters that are fun, like synonymous within the Halo universe, had such amazing growth in this book. So what do you need to read, watch, play, and or do before you read Halo: The Cold Protocol? Realistically, nothing. You could watch some of the Halo 2 anniversary terminals, specifically the ones about Fel Vadimi, to see like Jai take on Fel, or Thel take on those 3 assassins, though it looks more like training than an assassin attempt in those ones, which it might be, but it's good enough to give you visuals of what's happening in Thel's life prior to this book. But there isn't really anything. You could theoretically read the first 90 pages of Ghosts of Onyx. Oh wait, no, sorry, that is from a different, that is for a different book. Do not read Ghosts of Onyx to prepare for this. Scratch that all together. Sorry, I'm a couple books ahead, so I'm jumping ahead. You'll see in my next video after this. But realistically, yeah, there's nothing you need to read. Contact Harvest gets mentioned, but it's not a necessary read to understand this or even the Prophets. So with that being said, for the most part, you can jump into this book as its own thing. You won't be super confused. All the characters are original besides Captain Keyes, or Lieutenant Keyes, but even his story in Fall of Reach isn't big enough for you to like, you need to read that to understand Keyes in this book. So overall, you can start this book fresh, don't have to read, watch, or do anything prior to it. But yeah, but I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Again, this was a long video, 2-parter, but I'm glad I can get it talked about. I will see you in Halo Battleborn.